boys and girls. This is Mrs. Burnett. I just wanted to go over a few quick rules with you about adding positive and negative numbers. Mrs. Rudd and I both mentioned this yesterday in our videos about using number lines and using counters, and that our ultimate goal is to be able to solve addition problems with integers without having to use a number line or use counters, that there is a rule. For example, when we're adding numbers with the same sign, for example, positive 4 plus positive 5, this is the same thing as what you've been doing since probably first or second grade. 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. Both of these terms have positives, so I add the numbers together and I get a positive 9. If I have a negative 4 plus a negative 5, both of the terms have the same sign. They're both negative terms. So I'm going to add the 4 and the 5, and I get 9. But because they're both negative, my answer has to be negative 9. If both of your numbers, both of your terms are negative, there's no way you can get a positive answer. So when you have numbers with the same sign, the rule that we use for these is same sign, add, and keep the sign. So that's your little rule. If they have the same sign, they're both positives or they're both negatives, then you just add the numbers together and you keep whichever sign, the negatives or the positives. That's pretty straightforward, and most everybody yesterday showed us that they could do that. But where we ran into a few little snafus were with adding numbers with different signs. For example, 8 plus negative 5. These both have different signs. This is a positive 8. This term is positive. This term is negative. So what we have to do in this case is think about, maybe football. Football, many of you are familiar with, maybe some of you are not, but if you gain 8 yards, run forward 8 yards on a play, and then on the very next play you lose 5 yards, you still have a net gain of 3. When you look at 8 and the difference between 8 and negative 5, the difference is actually 3. On a number line, you saw moving forward 8 and then backwards 5, but you were still in a positive direction. If you used counters, you saw 8 positives, 5 negatives took away 5 of these positive numbers, and you were left with 3 positive ones. So that's the same thing as negative 5 plus 8. Because of the commutative property, we know we can change the order of the numbers that we add together and not change what the sum is going to be. The order doesn't matter with addition. So if I have a negative 5 yards on a play, I lose 5 yards, but then on the very next play, I gain 8 yards, then I have a net gain, and it is still 3 yards. What I've done basically is I have taken the difference of the absolute values. If I have 8 and I take the difference, that's subtraction, this positive 8, and the absolute value of negative 5, then the absolute value of 8 is 8. I subtract the absolute value of negative 5, which is 5, and I get 3. And that is my answer. The sign of the number with the highest absolute value is 8. It's positive, so my answer is also positive. So this is the rule for when we have numbers with different signs. We subtract the absolute values and take the sign of the larger absolute value. Let's look at another example. For example, -10 plus 5. These have different, these have different signs. I'm adding this positive 5. So if I take the difference of their absolute values, the difference is going to be -5. -10 minus 5. This is 10 minus 5 equal 5. But the larger absolute value is this number right here. And it was negative. Negative. This is the larger number. So my answer is a -5. All right, one more example. Boys and girls, one more example that I want to show you, and there might be a gap in this video because I keep messing up and my dog's barking. But anyway, is if we had 18 plus -12. If we have 18 plus -12, both of these numbers have different signs. This would be a positive 18. This would be a -12. So our rule is if we have different signs, we subtract the absolute values, but keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So the absolute value of 18 minus the absolute value of -12. This is 18 minus the absolute value of -12 is actually 12. When we subtract those two numbers, we end up with 6. But we don't stop right there. We say to ourselves, have I taken the sign of the number with the largest absolute value? 18 has the largest absolute value. 18 was our positive number. So our answer has to be positive. We have more positive than negatives. Hope this helps you out some.